Certification of compliance with the open meetings law.
This meeting was noticed to the media and public as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
The meeting agenda is set at this time. If anybody cares to present a comment to the committee, they should sign in, and we've got one here for sure from Linda Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner. And I don't want to jinx your budget and planning process, but I'm feeling cautiously optimistic that having departments present to the committees of jurisdiction and then asking supervisors to identify your top focus areas for the planning effort is really, really a good start, and doing it together is beneficial. And I watched the first committee get presented with their sheet, and I can appreciate the kind of, well, gee, what, are we supposed to turn these in right away or not? But I hope when you answer those questions, you see connections with other committees you serve on, because each committee is making decisions within a silo. But for instance, last night, public health met. And public health, our families need clean air, clean water, food, and housing. And some of the items on your agenda today affect or have implications for zoning. So you're going to be asked about a conservation easement, and it's intended to help prevent fragmentation of working lands, in this case forestry, but it could apply to agriculture. So when you have zoning decisions that seem to favor parceling off lands for recreational residential development, that is the kind of decision-making that kind of prompts the looking for incentives to preserve working lands. And when you talk about, there's a resolution that's coming to county board about the Canadian wildfires, which I really don't think is Sawyer County business, but if Sawyer County wants to worry about particulates in the air, then you could do air monitoring around the Hayward schools for industry that's there, or you could do air monitoring along the Tuscobia Trail for the dust that people experience from spring through fall. So when you answer those questions, please think about how decisions that you're making in other committees or that other committees are making that influence you have an effect, because it's all related. Thank you.
Thank you. Consider approval of minutes from previous meeting. Anyone care to?
Make a motion next.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Chequamegon Mountain Bike Festival.
Yeah, we have an application for the annual Chequamegon Fat Tire 40 on Sawyer County Forest. We have the appropriate application insurance. This is a recurring event. We do have some trail impacts to ATV trails, but I think these issues are all worked out between the groups. So.
Okay, and I guess we need to. So all the letter and the application is all complete then. We just need to approve?
Correct.
Okay. What's your pleasure, Ward?
Make a motion to approve the Chequamegon Mountain Bike Festival.
Is there a second to that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Headwater Rivers Forest Project, discussion and possible action. Mr. Dahlman.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thanks for finding time in your meeting to continue the dialogue and discussion. So with me, I have Ron Gropp, who was here in person last time. He's online, so he may speak up. I'm not sure if Forrest has been able to make it. I think he's out east doing some other work. So I am going to take a couple minutes just to reiterate, we sent you a packet of information that was put together for the state committee that reviews legacy applications in Wisconsin. There's a lot of information there, and what we were able to do is just kind of essentially pull together the highlights in a format that the Federal Forest Legacy Program requires us to apply. So just to start with where we're going with this. So we are in the very early stages of putting together a easement application for the Federal Forest Legacy Program. So we have, we are in the process of putting that together. We will be submitting that hopefully in September. And we are, like I said, in the early stages of getting that together. It'll go to a national review panel in late November. And then it'll be ranked against all the other projects that come in across the nation. So there's no guarantee we get funding. All we're doing is applying for application. If we were to get funding, then the work starts in moving it forward to figure out how we look for the other 25% matching funds that are required for this, either through private donations, in-kind donations, or state funds or other non-federal sources of funding. So that's where we're at in the process. Why we're here is just to make sure that you guys are informed on what's going on in your county and to get more information from you and work with your county folks to figure out how do we try to set something in advance of putting any restrictions on the land that is more amenable to what you guys need as a county. So with that, I just want to share a few things from the application that we put together. The state or the funding for the Forest Legacy Program comes from the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund. That is money that is generated from offshore gas and oil leases. It was signed into law with the current administration's first term, and it is meant to set aside lands for timber and recreational uses for future generations. So the application is kind of put together in the three different sections around important, threatened, and strategic. And again, you have all that information in your packet, but just a couple things that we learned through putting this together. The timber that comes off this current land is going to 25 mills in the state. And as you know, Sawyer County is a pretty big recipient of revenue and job supporting part of the economy for Sawyer County. I think in 22 numbers that I was able to find, somewhere around $385 million generated from timber alone. So it's a big driver in this county, as well as access to recreational lands. That in 24 numbers was something like $151 million. So recreational trails, timber access, and that's what these easements are about, is trying to maintain that over time. There's a lot of ecological reasons why we want to do this, about 38 miles of river and stream frontage on it. And when we calculated the amount of water that flows off this property, just thinking about what lands on it and what filters out it, somewhere around 23 billion gallons of water annually that filter through our rivers, keep our trout waters healthy. So it's pretty interesting to see those numbers. Why are we working on this, and what's the threat? When we looked at what's currently for sale in this 3-county area, there's 28,000 acres up for sale, 330 parcels. And we looked at the zoning of this property. If the current landowner, private landowner, wanted to, according to current zoning, we could have 4,100 parcels on this land. And we know that when lands get sold in 5s or 10 or 20 acre parcels, makes it more difficult to access for timber. When they're 40s and 80s or 160s in private ownership, it makes it really difficult for public access, trails, and other type of recreational use in those lands. So this landowner, and again, let me reiterate that this is a private voluntary program, and this landowner is choosing to set the direction on this land for timber and recreation so that they can not worry about. That's all they'll have, is the ability to manage timber on it, essentially. And it's a private decision of this landowner to seek this. And why we're here is, again, to inform the county, get your feedback, and if possible, get your support for projects like this moving forward. And there's been significant investments in these easements or this type of work in the county. As you guys know, there's the Chippewa and the Lake of the Pines projects that are currently existing. This project nests essentially within it. It's contiguous and adjacent to it. And just lastly, to wrap up, if we look at and step back on how this fits with other work that's going on, state forest action plans that were created by a group of forest stakeholders back in 2020 suggest that tools like this are a way to maintain access for timber. We know that comprehensive land use plans in all 3 counties that this property lands in this is consistent with the direction of those plans. And again, it's named Headwaters because there's a lot of water that flows off into really interesting, exceptional, and outstanding trout waters that eventually flow south into the Mississippi River system. So I am here to respond to any questions that you might have. Ron Grapp's on too. Ron leads the state's legacy program. And again, I would really appreciate the support from this committee, but if we can't get support, then the ability for us to at least submit the application, see how it competes nationally, and then really come back to this committee in the fall after we know where that funding is to sit down and answer and talk about more questions. Since the last meeting, we had an opportunity to meet with Greg to talk about access trails. I think there was a gravel question that came up. These things are all solutions that we can find or questions that we can find solutions to in this so that we can set the direction within the easement to allow those things to occur. So we're open and flexible on it and here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Committee, you have questions for Mr. Dahlman?
I have a question, I guess. So looking at this, you got this Aurora's company, it's in their best interest to keep this property anyway, because they're still using money off the revenue of logging it. They're going to sell the carbon credits. And now they want the federal government to give them money to keep in this legacy program, correct?
Well, if you, last time we were here, we talked about before 2000s who owned the lands, like Consolidated Papers. Those people, when they had mills and they were looking at the lumber feeding the mill, that was a different picture. They owned it for decades. These are investment companies that are beholden to their investors. And what we've seen in the last 25 years is that land probably has changed hand 3 or 4, maybe even 5 times since Consolidated owned it. These aren't long-term owners of it. So when we see those flips of lands, we see changes in ownership patterns and the footprint of those lands every time we see landowner changes. So I wouldn't say it's in their interest to hold it long-term. It's their interest to see if they can produce timber, create revenue, and if they have to, look at other opportunities for them to gain revenue. One of these options are a working forest easement on it. So yeah, this is financially motivated too. They are looking to monetize a value of from their lands that they're currently giving away for free, and then essentially memorialize that use, timber and access for future generations. And that's really what the Forest Legacy Program was set up to do, to address these type of things. And we do have Ron Grappa online if you have any questions for the State Legacy Coordinator, Director.
Will it be logged, steadily logged, that area, like it is, like the county forest is, basically?
Yeah, so if Forrest talked about that a little bit last time around. So the logging and the harvesting that'll be happening on there is going to be based on a management commitment that's written for the managed forest law in the state. It has to meet sustainable forest requirements in order to be into that program. And really, these large landowners need to be in MFL to be able to financially operate and own these lands. So the sustainable management is really directed by the MFL program. And yes, they're going to need to harvest timber in a way that meets state's sustainable harvest goals or regulations. I don't know if it'll be managed like the county. Probably, I don't know.
Greg, is that the way the county manages our forest?
Yeah, I mean, timber management is our biggest priority, so we have an allowable cut every year that we try to hit, and that's calculated out so we remain sustainable. So, part of that we do wrap in, rec programs and everything, and we are enrolled in the carbon program now too. But our goal is to put as much fiber on the market that we're allowed to through our allowable cut, so.
Did you see this Aurora managing the forest basically the same as you manage them? You see it that it's same?
I think it's similar, they have different goals. And as was stated, I mean, the property has changed hands a lot, so each new company that comes in, they have a little bit different goal, different style. Industrial private is a little bit different than county forest. So I think in years past, it's been similar, but county forest program's pretty unique though, too.
Yeah, I would just add is we asked Forest for the timber data on the property and what they have as inventory. And again, you remember when this first got owned or changed from consolidated, it was Plum Creek that owned it. They had a model of let's cut it as hard as you can. Let's get it in as small parcels as you can get for development so that they can get revenue back into their investors. And technically, this land needs somewhat of a rest. The inventory on it has it that there's only 2,600 acres of the 26,000 that are essentially typed as mature, like 80-year-old and older. It's a young forest, so you're not going to see the volume of timber coming off this land as you had in the last decade or so, just because it's not there yet.
If I understand correctly, Aurora owns or claims to own at least the existing two conservation easements in Sawyer County, the Chippewa Flowage and Lake of the Pines. That is correct?
Your comment about claims to own, I'm not sure if they claim to own. I think they do own
Okay.
the lands. Yeah.
That's interesting to me because, it isn't very obvious to anyone in the courthouse here because none of our land records departments or survey departments show Aurora as an owner. It shows other entities.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the way that a lot of these TIMO investors, the timber management organizations, own land is through investment funds. So they'll go out and raise a name of a fund where they populate it with millions of investors' dollars, and then they purchase the land underneath the fund name. But those funds are essentially owned by Aurora. So part of this process and what Ron is going to be working on soon is title. We have to run the title check on it. So we'll be running, and we have talked with Joe Schwartz, who's the manager for Aurora. They're going to send us their title data commitment so that we can see that. But in the meantime, we're going to be running title on it too. So we have to verify that they own the lands that they own. What happens with those two easements, I'm not sure. What I'm talking about is this 26,000 acres and whether they own that and have the right to put an easement on it.
Yeah, but the fact that you own, or Aurora owns, the land on which we already have two conservation easements, and apparently the owners of the land on, say, the Chippewa Flowage easement, that the ownership has changed multiple times since the easement was signed. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, Ron, can you answer that question about ownership of the Chippewa easement since Plum Creek put it on?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to check in real quick. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's correct. When we acquired the Chippewa Flowage easement, it was under the ownership of Plum Creek. I believe that was back in 2010, maybe 2012 timeframe. That land quickly changed hands to the Forest Land Group shortly thereafter. And then now we are now onto our, I guess, third different landowner since we acquired the conservation easement on the Chippewa Flowage property under Aurora.
So it went from Plum Creek to the Forest Land Group to Aurora.
And Aurora essentially acquired all of the assets of the Forest Land Group, I want to say probably 3 years ago now, late 2021, maybe 2022. Essentially, yeah, Aurora assumed or acquired all of the assets of the Forest Land Group at that time. So they've been the current landowner, Aurora, that is, of this property for 3 years now.
Okay, well, I guess it's news to all of us because we didn't have a clue. And you talk about being informed and transparent, and it's pretty fuzzy here yet. So we're just trying to understand what's going on and who's doing what. And also the fact that these lands have changed hands 3, 4, 5 times over the course of a couple of decades. What does the future look like? I mean, do you anticipate more swapping or selling of these parcels?
If I had a crystal ball, I would say that Aurora probably isn't going to own the Chippewa and Lake of the Pines for long. I mean, these investment companies they have actuaries and accountants that sit there and say, how can we make our return on investment as quick as we can? The purchase that they made from Forest Land Group was 1.7 million acres across the country for $1.7 billion. So there's a lot of money put into investment, and the quicker they turn lands, the quicker they turn these funds into cash for their investors. So there is no long-term commitment like we saw in the paper company's ownership in the past. This is about how do we maximize the gains on those lands. So if we don't put these easements on, we continue to see that small sale land recreational sales is a really good way for them to maximize return on their investment. So we will slowly see, and we have already since, and I think Ron mentioned this last time, when you look at the large account MFL, not that all these lands were lost to harvesting or to the MFL program, but the large account back in 1999 was somewhere around 1.2 million acres. We're looking at 600 and some thousand acres in the large account. That's just because we're seeing these flips happen really quick. So, I don't know what the future holds, but what we've seen in the trend for the last 20 years is fragmentation, parcelization, smaller parcel size, and other owners quickly turning these lands.
If I could just quickly jump in and add on to what Matt just said there. I think that's true. These TIMOs have a planning horizon of anywhere between 8 to 12 years. And then after that, they put them on the market, and then the next TIMO comes along and purchases that same property. So I think we can expect that there will be land ownership changes going forward into the future. And the beauty of the conservation easement is that it keeps that landscape intact as one large contiguous tract. And so even though we can make accommodation for subdivisions, those subdivisions tend to be fairly large in nature and very few in nature. So the idea is to, when these TIMOs do sell, they can't sell off smaller and smaller tracts. They have to sell the intact footprint with the conservation easement on it. That's one of the benefits of protecting the land with a conservation easement.
So again, the headwaters, if I looked at the map correctly, it appears there's 3 different sub-entities that make up the headwaters, at least in Sawyer County, and I think there's a different one in Price County. Was it KN or KW something? Was the name of the entity?
So if you
There's Wisconsin Great Northern and Fund 8 Lake.
Ron, do you know the actual holding names of the lands that are in Sawyer County?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ones. One is Great Lakes Rural.
Great Lakes Rural, correct?
Yeah. The other one I think is Wisconsin Northern Highlands.
Right. Mhm.
And I think there's a third one.
Fund 8 Lake Nuco LLC.
Yep, that's correct. Yep, and again, just to circle back to how Matt was explaining that, Aurora is the underlying fee title owner of all of this property in Wisconsin. What they do as Matt mentioned is they divide it up into different funds, and for purposes of MFL, I think they do it from that standpoint as well, just so that they can manage it accordingly, the different funds that those lands are, obviously they're generating revenue, and so that's how they manage those funds accordingly. But at the end of the day, Aurora is the underlying fee title owner.
And if Aurora decides to divest itself of the land included in the Headwaters project, it would have to divest all three of those sub-entities, or would it be able to divide those up?
Ron, I don't think there's any, unless you know differently, I don't think there's any restrictions on the easement. If you're talking about the lands that are currently in easement, the footprint of those easements stay intact. If you're talking about the 18,500 acres that are in the county right now that are not restricted, that are in their ownership, they would have the right to divest of those however they want, whatever zoning allows. And at this point, it would be 4,100 acres or parcels that it would be allowed under zoning. So they could sell them however they want. Doesn't have to sell by the fund. And in fact, they could sell small tracts and subdivisions just so that they could repopulate their fund and then sell 16,000 acres instead of the whole thing. So again, the direction of this is to, do we value the footprint of the lands in intact land base that we have right now, because that landscape will change and we've seen it changing, and that's what these easements do.
And I guess Aurora publicly proclaims to be a carbon credit company, basically, that does a little forest management, essentially. And Forrest indicated he's not like the rest of the company, that he's going to be doing his own thing here in the Lake States to a degree. And I just wonder, how long that's going to go on under the philosophy of the company as a whole.
I can't answer that. They're a timber management investment organization. That's how they're financially structured. They're looking at what sources of revenue they can have to put back into their fund. Real estate, carbon, timber, all that stuff is fair game. How they manage, again, it has to be sustainable. It has to fit the managed forest law and the state oversight of that program. So what that means with carbon, I can't imagine it's going to interfere with them much more than it does with county ownership.
I can address the carbon aspect a little bit as well, as it relates to both the conservation easement and MFL. And again, remember, it's really important to understand that the easement and MFL are two very different things, right? There's nothing in easement that requires that the property be enrolled in MFL. Landowners can withdraw from MFL at any time. What the easement would do is that if they decided to withdraw from MFL, that easement stays in place and protects the property, and they still have to manage according to sustainable forest management practices, according to a management plan approved by the chief state forester. So even if they take it out of MFL, there's still a requirement to manage sustainably according to an approved forest management plan. So I think carbon, with the new American Carbon Registry verification standards, companies have to come to entities who hold any sort of an encumbrance on that property, or if it's enrolled in sort of a state tax law program like Wisconsin has here, they have to come to us and ask for confirmation from us that what they're proposing to do does not conflict with the easement and or in this case, the managed forest law. And so we have to analyze that, and we have to essentially give them an indication about whether or not it does conflict. And if it does, they have to go back to the drawing board and restructure how they're planning to do their carbon project. If it doesn't, then we give essentially the nod that, what they're proposing to do does not conflict with either the easement or the MFL, program standards, rules, and regulations. So they have to come to us and ask us to do that. we have to essentially give them an affirmative approval to move forward under the terms and conditions of the conservation easement.
Okay, thank you. Still a bit fuzzy on some aspects of this for sure. Certainly some benefits. I mean, there's benefits out there for sure. And but again, there are some concerns. Some concerns about the fact that this is a forever obligation, and again, it seems a bit presumptuous of us here today to say what's right for the folks 100 or 200 years into the future. And but I guess we have a choice. Well, possible action, I guess, is the way this is teed up to our committee, so we can vote to support or vote not to support or not vote at all. Is that kind of
That's
as
entirely
you see them?
up to the committee. Mr. Chair, you mentioned something about what happens 100, 200 years down the road. All I know in the years that I've been working with the Nature Conservancy, and I've been in the Northwoods my entire career, Ashland, Tomahawk, Minocqua, what we can't do is put this landscape back together. And what we've seen when Plum Creek came in 25 years ago is that landscape has been lost. That 600,000 acres that Consolidated owned, we're not putting it back together. If investment companies continue to own this unrestricted, our options will be limited in 100 years because it'll be private owned, small parcels, and we're not going back to what it once was. So the values that I'm here is I'd rather see that in a intact forest so that we can recreate and cut timber on 200 years down the road versus, that's just my values, I guess. But anyway. So yeah, those are your options. It's your choice, but.
What say
Again,
you?
if I may.
Oh, go ahead.
If I may, thank you, Committee Chair. So I think it's really important to recognize from the DNR Secretary's office, this engagement of local units of government is not only extremely important, but it's an expectation. Hence the reason why myself, Matt, and Forrest have come before this committee on a couple of different occasions now. I know my department leadership really expects us to be very proactive in engaging local units of government and gaining support for these types of projects, trying to get out ahead of essentially some of the misinformation and misunderstanding that might exist about conservation easements in general, about our Forest Legacy program in general. It's one of the reasons why we want to spend as much time in front of you folks as possible, just so that we can build that awareness and build that consensus of support for what we're attempting to do here. So I just want to make sure that, on behalf of the Secretary's office here at DNR, it's really important that we speak with you and we continue that dialogue. I guess the second thing is that I would leave you with is, at the end of the day, it is this is really a tool in the toolbox that landowners have to protect their property. It's voluntary, completely voluntary. We do, on the behalf of the DNR, we do very little proactive, outreach of our conservation easement program, mostly because we just simply haven't had to. And we rely on our partners like Matt to, kind of carry that water for us in a large regard. So, but we look at landowners to be in the, if you will, the best position to make the decision about what's best for their property. And one of the tools, again, in their toolbox is the use of a conservation easement to for the protection of this property for long-term public benefits that we all enjoy. continued flow of raw products, wildlife habitat, recreation opportunities, and things in those regards. So I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come before you again and talk a little bit more about our conservation easement program. And I guess at the end of the day, ask for your support and moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Committee, what say you?
I'm gonna just propose no action at this time.
I'm in complete support of conservancy and the legacy of our lands. We talk about, fragmentation, and that is one of the things in the Sawyer County, comprehensive plan is to eliminate fragmentation of forest land. So I think this is an excellent project.
Yeah, I agree with Kay there on her plus. That to keep it intact, otherwise it's gonna be parceled out. And we don't have control of that, but I think the county should support keeping it in an intact unit. And there's a conservation part, basically be like part of the county forest, basically. Only we don't have control of it like we do. So that's the only drawback is the county has no say in the matter after the fact. It'd be nice if it was county forest.
Well, I heard a motion, but I didn't hear a second. Is there a second to the motion? Yeah. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Say aye. Aye.
Can you restate the motion? There were two different statements.
My motion was no action at this time.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? 3-2, I guess.
So, Mr. Chairman, what can we do? I mean, what do you want us to do what do you need from us, I guess? What more information do you need? We're happy to, I don't know. What do you need?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what exactly we need, but
I got a question to you. So if this land comes up for sale, why doesn't the state just buy it and then they can put it in forever themselves? Instead of taking away from these investment companies all the time, they're flipping money. Now they're gonna take this money from the federal government. And 2 years from now, they're gonna flip it again and sell it off to somebody else. And they're just taking the money and running it.
Ron, can you answer why we can't buy every piece of land in the state?
Yeah, I can certainly address that. Couple of reasons. One, I don't, direction from our legislative leaders has indicated that we are not in the fee title acquisition business any longer. I think there's a sense that there's already too much public land that the DNR holds. And so I think the idea of the state taking ownership of 18,000 acres, or in this case, 26,000 acres, when you look at the footprint across Price, Sawyer, and Bayfield counties, probably not going to happen from that standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be nice, but the reality is that's just not on the table. I don't believe at this point.
And this isn't going to end. I mean, they're going to do exactly what you said. They will take the money, they'll put the easement on. The only thing that we know when the easement's in place is that the footprint will stay the same And in 10 years, it'll be a different owner. And then 10 years after that, it'll be a different owner and it'll be a different owner. So it's going to continue.
And I do want to address the funding issue a little bit. I think it's come up a couple of times now, just so we're clear about where this funding comes from. It comes from, as Matt mentioned earlier, the Land and Water Conservation Fund. That fund was permanently authorized under the first Trump administration under the Great American Outdoors Act. And I just want to say the Forest Legacy Program, well, before I go there, so just understand that the funding for legacy comes from that fund, and that is not taxpayer money. Okay, it's not coming out of our back pockets or our pocketbook in any way, shape, form, or another. As Matt mentioned, it's funded through offshore drilling receipts from large companies from that standpoint. Congress is the appropriator of those funds. And I would say Forest Legacy is one of the very few programs that continues to receive bipartisan support from both parties and in both chambers of our congressional delegation. In fact, it was zeroed out under the president's budget earlier this year, under the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Senate essentially said, no, hold on. We're going to put money back into this program. Congress likes the legacy program. And so the way it works is it's a grant that comes to the state. Okay, so we apply, which is kind of where we're at right now. We're in the process of applying for the federal funding for this project through a grant, through what's called the state grant option, which allows the state to then hold title to or the conservation easement itself. The Federal Forest Service grants the funding to the states, and then we pay the landowner for the value of those rights that they're selling to us. At the end of the day, the federal government really doesn't have a whole lot of involvement after the conservation easement is executed and recorded. It's really the state's responsibility to continue to hold that easement, and our principal responsibility in that regard is essentially just oversight, periodic inspections, monitoring, and enforcement of the terms and conditions of the easement. So once the grant funding comes to the state, our federal partners are essentially not part of managing that easement going forward.
Okay, thank you. Steve, Mr. Chair, we'll be in touch and find out if there's more information that we can get the committee or a site visit or whatever you need to make a final decision. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Register of Deeds report.
The real estate market has been outstanding. As you can see kind of on the report, the Laredo monthly subscriptions, which is the title companies and the attorneys, were $4,700, which was quite high. Our recorded documents were 514. Our transfer fees were just shy of $100,000. And then vital records, unfortunately, we've had a lot of deaths but marriages and all that stuff. And so it's way better. It's probably the best month we've had. So just based on the real estate market, hopefully it will continue. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go into the budget and strategic plan areas of focus, I just want to say a little bit to prep you for all that you're looking at today. The budgets, these are smallish departments for the county. They're all very service oriented, a lot of window time. I get out in the house a lot and I see a lot of people at each of their windows, and they all do an excellent job with that. So I want to commend them for that. And when we're looking at their budgets, none of these have really asked for anything different. They're, like I said, they're small, they're staff driven, service oriented departments. And the little bit of change you'll see in some of these, some up, some down, really comes down to, we had, I think, staffing changes in 4 of the 5 represented here from a year ago. And it's health insurance plans going from maybe nothing to a single or single to family or family to single. So those are really the only changes we're looking at. And then when we're talking about strategic plan areas of focus, I've asked for 3 from each of these departments for you to come up with 3. If you can't come up with 3, that's fine. Just do the best you can. What we're doing with this is it's forming a baseline of data for the board to look at as we build our strategic plan. So, you know, you're hearing from these committee or departments reporting to your committees each month, kind of hear what they're doing, what they need, and what's going well, what isn't. And then we're going to build from that. So this has given us kind of unfiltered first look is what I like to call it, from you as committee members. So that's really all I had to say about this, and then can start going to each of the individual presentations.
Yeah, yeah, so this was my first budget and nothing really changed. Like Mike said, just a little bit more in like health insurance, someone going from, you know, a smaller one to more increased for family. Just a little bit more for travel. I'm going to conferences and stuff to learn more, educate myself. But everything, other than that, everything just basically was like the 2025 budget, just a little tweak here and there. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Land records and county surveyor reports, land information office report.
Hi, so my name is Brian DeVries. I'm the Land Information Officer, as you should know. And so every month, Kimberly puts together her report. Chris puts together his report. You can ask me any questions if you have anything. And I can go over our budget summary here if you're ready for that.
Okay, any questions? All right, budget summary.
So, yeah, the Land Records Office is a, it's an office that provides information to the public. We house any geospatial data. It's Land Records deals with GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and that's any data with a location element. So we house that and provide answers from the analysis of that, or provide that data specifically to other departments or to the private land professionals. We've got a website that handles a lot of that, a couple websites actually. And our budget in general is office equipment based. Our primary cost is software. We cover maintenance fees for our public facing websites. Those costs rise every year. So if we have any sort of cost situation, it's going to be in paying software or website vendors. The other budget that we cover is the land information grant. So the Land Records Office has the Wisconsin Land Information Program grant, where we have a committee that meets a couple times a year. We also have a 3-year plan that details the projects that we work on under that grant. That grant gets funded by the Register of Deeds document recording. But it's also a base budget grant where we get so much funding from our own documents, and then the rest up to 100,000 plus is funded from the state. So some counties make all their money in the program from their own recorded documents, bigger counties. And other counties, with less recordings, make less money from their recordings and then get the rest filled in from the state. So that's how it kind of works across the state. We use that funding for land records modernization. So since the project started, we're in our 10th or 11th year of submitting parcel data to the state. So we've spent a long time making sure that our records are, readily available online for the public. That's not something that happens, countywide necessarily. So our office has always been rather, progressive in making our information available. It's open records, and open records need to be available to the public. So we spend our grant money on that. A small portion of that grant money does pay for staff. And in the future, like currently, what we're spending that money on currently is aerial photography. We get aerial photography every 5 years, and it's a big cost. So we've got to, be thinking about that over the years. We need to be saving this money from the grant to pay for this bigger cost. The next big cost coming up in a few years from now will be LiDAR. So that's that is another plane sensor-based product that gets flown similar to aerial photography, and that has a pretty high cost too.
As far as software, I find myself using Beacon quite a bit lately. It's got some really, really nice features, but it's got some shortcomings too.
Right on.
That being only 500 entities if you do a search.
Yeah.
And especially with this Aurora land holdings thing,
Right.
I found that to be a barrier.
It's a weird limit.
Yeah,
Like if let's say you had a big lake and you wanted to say, show me all the parcels that are on this lake. I want to make mailing labels to mail out to the association or, my neighbors. It limits you at a certain amount.
yeah.
Beacon was a website that we were, presented with when our previous company folded and, handed their documents over to Beacon. So we're with them for cost reasons, but it's taking care of the job. So.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Very good. On to forestry, I guess. Oh, surveyor, I'm sorry.
So I'm Chris Gregory, I'm the county surveyor, and usually I just send a report in, so usually don't see me in here. But our department is by statute in charge of maintaining all the maps of survey records that come in partnership with land records. And one of our biggest areas that we work in is preservation of public land survey corners, your section corners, quarter corners. Those were placed by surveys that were done by the federal government before any land ownership changed from federal to private ownership. And those are the starting points for every parcel of land there is, all either originate from one of those corners or is determined by the positions of those corners. So our charge is to make sure those are there. If they're not there, we're putting them back in. So our primary area of focus is preservation of the ones we still have before they're lost to road construction or development. We currently have about 700 corners that are just lost. mostly out in the big federal forest areas or county forest areas that haven't seen much development in the last 100 years. So we're constantly working, mostly in the winter time when the leaves are off, trying to work at putting those corners back in. And so that's segueing into our budget. The only increase I asked for in my budget this year is for material costs for monumenting corners. The cost of, we try to use durable materials for corner monuments, aluminum tubes or aluminum rods. And the price of aluminum is just skyrocketed in the last several years. So what we've had for a budget for those materials is just not keeping up anymore. But really the rest of most of my budget is equipment, vehicle, fuel, and materials, aside from the actual cost of myself and my technician. We're a 2-person department, so. Really all I had.
Our grant funding also goes to help support Chris's efforts. It's part of the Wisconsin Land Information Program to get that monumentation framework established, reestablished. So yeah, some of our funding goes in that direction as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? If not, I guess we'll move on to county forestry.
Okay, for the month of July, we did have 9 timber sales listed and active. We had a fair amount of activity with the conditions we've had. We did have 2 sales close out in July. Currently, our sale value sold and uncut on file is just over 4.7 million. Revenue for the month, we're at 262,000. So our year-to-date revenue, we're just short of 1.3 million. So we're on track for our budgeted revenue amount for the year. Sale inspections are on target for the level of activity. We're starting to get some tracks turned in for review. We had 7 turned in this past month. We're starting to put together the fall timber sale bid perspectives already. So that's why all the tracks are starting to come in. Recon acres are well above target for our goal for the year. We are still working through our new Good Neighbor Authority contract. Not a lot of hours this month, but we are still plugging away on that. Oak wilt, the restrictions were lifted on July 15th. We did have a little bit of a DNR flight. I'll let Craig talk about that in his spot. We did have several identified new infective trees in both the Coudray block and the Sealy block that we just observed through our field work. And we treat those with a frill girdle and an herbicide so we can prevent the spread through the root grafts. Nothing new for bike trails or Berkey Trail. ATV, UTV, we did receive acceptable bids on 4 out of 5 rehab projects. There is an attached bid list in my packet. The projects are scheduled to be completed by the end of 2026. A couple new contractors in the mix on that. We did have a lot more interest this go around for our projects, so that's good to see. Nothing new on parks. For carbon, we did have a call that Mike and I were on to go over our status with the carbon project. They're finishing the verification steps probably by the end of this year. And the target is our credits should be on the market sometime in the first quarter next year. And the big question that we ask always is when will we see some revenue? And it's sounding like possibly by the end of 2026, we should see something. But that's all I have to report. If there's any questions?
Thank you very much, Greg. Okay, and budget request.
Budget for forest, same as the rest. The continuation of 2025.
All right. Snowmobile Trail 30 reroute proposal.
Okay, we have a proposal. Our existing Trail 30, that's as you can see on the yellow line, the map coming south. Once as it sits now, it hits Chippewa Trail and runs down Chippewa Trail and comes out down towards the golf course and eventually towards the casino. We have a proposal to reroute the trail off of the Chippewa Trail Road. We've had a fair number of complaints over the years. You know, it's a more of a residential area now. So we have an opportunity to shift this trail across a couple of chunks of county forest and existing woods roads, and a couple of private parcels that the Snowmobile Alliance has obtained permission to route the trail on. We're also looking for permission from Town of Hayward to run along Tower Road, and then a highway crossing on County B. I think this is a pretty good project. This is going to solve a lot of issues. We like I said, it's already on existing trail. Very minimal work to get this up and running as a snowmobile trail. So if you have any questions, I think we do have some Alliance reps here that have worked on the project. If you have any further questions, otherwise, I think this is a real good project that should be reduce a lot of conflict.
Thank you, Greg. Questions?
No, I'm gonna make a motion that we accept and move on to reroute Trail 30.
There's a second?
I'll second that.
Right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
So this will have to go to a county board for approval also as a new trail.
Okay. Good, thank you. Land trade proposal, discussion and possible action.
Okay, we got another one right away. I didn't seek this out. And we typically don't do a lot of these, but we had a request from a neighboring landowner, and this came out of not a dispute, but a discussion of fence law. The neighbor to this 40 that's in Town of Hayward, Joe Naylor, he's running expanding. He's hoping to expand his farming program here. As you can see, the county forest parcel listed in section 17, we don't have a legal access to it. In order to access it for timber sale, we would likely have to go through Naylor's property or somebody else. So he approached us looking to trade that for a 40 in the Coudray block that he has the ability to purchase from Tremblay Sweet Shop. So, like I said, I don't like doing a lot of these trades, but this one I think has some possibility of being a positive for us. It fits the criteria where we can block in. Like I said, the legal access thing is like you can't corner hop. So it's a bit of a difficulty. You know, and he was willing to grant us the access to cut the timber sale. So it's not like he's holding us over a barrel on this thing or anything. But additionally, it's like we would eliminate 2 miles of property line that we have to maintain on this and just block in our forest a little bit. This being our parcel enrolled in county forest, this is different than the last one, but we would have to go through a withdrawal process from the state. And that's never a given thing. So there's more to this, but I think if the committee wasn't in favor of pursuing this, I think we could make an argument that this would benefit the public. It would certainly benefit our management program as well. So at this point, I guess I'm just looking for a yay or nay to proceed on this from the committee. If the committee was in favor of pursuing this, our next step would be getting a appraisal done. And hopefully we could, at minimum, split the cost between the landowner and the county if that's what we want to do, if we want to pursue this.
So other than the benefit of less property line to maintain, timber values are maybe similar on?
Timber values are similar. They're both 100% wooded. They're both primarily aspen. The county parcel is a little bit more mature. In fact, we were getting ready to set up a timber sale on that one. The Tremblay 40 is probably, I would just at first glance, probably 35-year-old aspen. So it's younger, but I mean, it's good stocking, you know, and it'll get there at some point. So.
All right, committee?
I want to make a motion that we move forward with the possible land swap.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Jim? Very good. Okay, take care, Randy. Wisconsin DNR report.
Hello. So like Greg mentioned, we had a oak wilt flight earlier this month, a couple weeks ago. It went over the Stony Hill block. During the flight, they didn't locate any oak wilt in that area. We're looking at potentially maybe getting a second flight in the near future over Sisebagama, but that's currently to be determined. Otherwise, we've just been plugging away, getting sales prepped, have a couple, field works wrapped up or pretty close to wrapped up on, and should be able to get them out for the fall bid. And then pretty soon we'll be beginning mechanical scarification with our fire dozers. It's going to be a good acorn year and then a good white pine seed crop. So we're going to try to get some bare dirt for some seeds to land on. And that'll be white pine. That'll be starting pretty soon. Oak will be later in the fall, but that's kind of what we have going on.
Okay, thank you much. Any questions? Okay, next we have the recreational trails report, motorized.
Good morning, everybody. Tim Davison, Sawyer County Snowmobile Alliance. We're proceeding with looking into fall, getting projects wrapped up. I've been working with the federal government on a couple alterations of trails up in the forest along Highway 77 and also down along Highway B. Just minor alterations to the trails, a couple landowner requests. Otherwise, we've been doing maintenance, we've been grading trails, we've started brushing, we're doing quite a bit of brushing now. We've been working on the Tuscobia Trail quite a bit. We've got some culvert issues on the Tuscobia. We're working with the DNR on securing funding to replace those culverts. It's an ongoing thing on the Tuscobia. We probably do 3-4 culverts a year. We're gonna currently go out with forestry and do a culvert inspection and marking of the culverts next month. So we're a little more up to date on how we can treat these, maybe be a little more proactive on it. Other than that, we're getting ready for winter. So any questions? Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tim. Non-motorized, anybody here? Yes, not. We're on to zoning and conservation. Conservation report.
Yes, as part of the conservation reports, our AAS coordinator surveyed Black Dan Lake, Silverthorne Lake, and Knutson Lake for invasive species. Also had done clean boats and clean waters training on Windigo Lake. Additional boat inspections were also conducted on Spider Lake, as well as water quality testing on Lake Loretta and Barber Lake. We had 2 additional cost share erosion projects that have concluded and also reviewed 2 waste storage permit. We are waiting still in the town of Winter. I believe they had their meeting. I don't know if it was last night or if it's tonight. But we are waiting on them to determine if they want to proceed with helping fund the gate repair on the Price Dam gate that controls Lake Winter. These is a county-owned dam and it's cost shared with the town of Winter. We did get an estimate back and it'll be close to about the $14,000 range, again, split between county and town. We've also conducted our third meeting as part of our Land Water Management Plan Advisory Committee. That plan will eventually go through a committee of jurisdiction, most likely this one for any final approvals, but we are still working on the updates to that plan. As far as, those that may not know exactly what conservation does, generally, I mean, conservation programs in the state of Wisconsin are intended to, protect the natural resources of the county, specifically the soil and water aspects. So our conservation department does cost sharing projects, provides technical assistance and education programs. We also house the aquatic invasive species coordinator, which does the monitoring and inventory of those invasive species. We also own 7 county dams, which the conservation department is tasked with monitoring the changing lake level heights depending on droughts or rain events. Out of those 7 county-owned dams, one of them is split with the town of Winter. And one of the dams that we don't own, we are 50% responsible for repairs and maintenance to. That one being the Birch Lake Dam, which is owned by Washburn County. This then will lead into some of my budget discussion, where the conservation budget as a whole isn't necessarily changing at all. And in fact, we actually are anticipating that we're going to receive additional funding from the state as part of the state budget bill to fund some of our conservation staff. Right now, it's set up that 100% of the first position is paid, and that is Tim Seidel's salary, and up to 70% of the second position, which is Natalie Erler. That second position was never fully funded by the state, but it looks as part of the new state budget that was passed, that 70% of that second position will be fully funded now moving forward. So we would anticipate receiving that additional compensation from the state to, again, fund that position that we ultimately would pay for. As part of the CIP request, that is where I have added a couple different things. I don't know if you want me to discuss those at this point. We had heard that the presentation from Amy as part of the Natural Geological Historic Society, as far as a groundwater monitoring program. I have included that as part of the CIP request. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I believe it was close to 108,000 over 2 years.
53 each year.
Yeah.
Next year in 27.
Yeah. So that is put in as part of the CIP request. We have the ongoing Fish Trap Dam replacement project. It was initially anticipated that may occur still here in 2025. That's actually been moved now to 2026. It is anticipated fall of 2026. We will be looking at doing that replacement project. The plans right now for the dam replacement is on the state level, and the state doesn't have a specific time frame in which they have to review those plans. As part of that plan submittal, and this will be an agenda item for next month, we are needing a county land swap of some of that area. It is a even swap of land. I believe it's close to 2,200 square feet, so very small amount, but it's for some area that's below the dam in which we want to be the owner of, and in the same time, we would trade him some additional land that's above, and most of that land that's above the dam is actually underwater. The owner of that land that's adjacent to the dam, Steve Perry, is agreeable to this, but it still would need to go through the proper jurisdiction, committee of jurisdiction and county board to solidify that land swap. So just an FYI, that'll be brought to you next month to start that process as well. Going back to the other CIP request items, we did get notification, I believe it was earlier this year, that the Washburn County Dam, that Birch Lake Dam, they are anticipating some additional repairs needed on that dam. And again, we, as part of an MOU, are 50% responsible for those repairs and alterations. I believe those amounts were around $10,000 on just Sawyer County's side. So I did include that as part of a CIP request. They don't have a full amount, but it was identified through a dam inspection that there's some eroding to the concrete. So there are, repairs of that spalling of the concrete that are needed to be done on that dam. And dams in general cost the county, quite a bit of money. I mean, I talk about this all the time, and they are just something that just keeps recurring. But it is something that does provide, benefits to those individuals that may live on that impoundment body of water. So there is a pro and con to those costs. So I do believe I've also identified some additional inspections that are due in the next, 5 years. And those inspections generally run anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. I've included those as part of an ongoing CIP request as well.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions for Jay? If not, we will move on to USDA report. Nothing this week, this month. Treasurer in-rim parcel update. Discussion and possible action.
I just wanted to give the update to the committee that we did sell 26 of those 37 parcels for that 270,000 mark. We are going to continue on the bidding process of the last 11 parcels. We're going to aggressively cut the minimum bid on them and also reach out to some of the neighboring people to see if we can't get those last 11 sold. The discussion and motion to approve the deeding tax ID. Oh, this is a long roadway. There's a parcel that's out there that's just part of a roadway. And instead of trying to sell it, it's one of these 11 that are left on the remaining to sell. And you can see that it doesn't really include anything but roadway. And instead of selling it outright, I would like to just deed it over to the town of Spider Lake. So, and I'm asking for, discussion if anybody wants to talk about it, or if I can just go ahead and get that deeded over to the town of Spider Lake.
I assume there's little, if any, cost involved.
The tax process from our corporate council, which is Duffy's, is $150.
Private road out there.
What's that?
It's a private road out there.
I believe that's a public road.
The public road stops before this map. Right?
I'd have to check on that, Brian.
Okay.
So maybe I'll have to table that to find out, report that at the next meeting.
Okay, so we won't take any action then, I presume.
Yeah, I'll report that in the next meeting and find out.
All right. Board appointed committee updates. We have anything there? Correspondence, reports from conferences and meetings. Anybody? Future agenda items.
Yeah, the land swap for that fish trap dam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to swap that land there at the fish trap dam.
Okay. We are adjourned then. Thank you all. Okay, take care, Mike. Thank you.